you have a brilliant ability to break down so many different, layers of the human anatomy. I mean, most people didn't even know that our bodies are communicating through light inside ourselves, but it makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy and it's available everywhere. So
And pretty soon they're going to ban us being able to even talk about fascia, publicly. So we better talk about it while we can. Most people don't even know it exists. So when you think about the word fascia, um, why do you think they use that word for that little material in our body?
well, it's the root word, the Latin root word of fascius, fascis, a bundle. It does look like a bundle of sticks when I guess you're looking at it in regards to the muscle.
How much of it is? If you could squeeze out all the fascia you have of an average person, like put it on the table, what would it look like?
You know what? That's a good question. We may need to take some cadavers and test that for ourselves. I'm not sure if people have done that
Like,
before.
suck up all the linguine of it all, the fascia, because it's got to be
Mm.
linguine like if it's fascia, and then put it on the table. Is it see through? What does it feel like? Jelly, gelatin? What's it made out of?
Well, you have sort of the fibrous material, the collagenous, the collagen fibrils, and
Yeah.
then you do have some like a gel-like matrix that also uh, is involved. It sort of permeates that the fibers permeate within, and so it'd be kind of like a combo. You got the sauce, and then you got the noodles. So you got the sauce, you got the extracellular matrix, you got the goopy stuff, and then you got the noodles, you got the collagen fibers. So if you were to put it out on a table, it would be a giant mess. So I wouldn't
What would it
recommend.
look like? I mean, is it see through or colorful?
It would be see through. Think of like a fiber optic
Yeah.
wire. They have those clear wires that it'd be kind of like that because that's somewhat uh some of their function.
Yeah. So all of our body from head to toe is covered in it, right?
Yeah, it is a wrapping that encases all of our organs, encases all of our muscles, encases our brain, and it even connects it together. They're sort of interwoven through nerves and blood vessels.
So people used to think it was just like plastic, almost like our own body's version of plastic wrap for our food or or whatever our meat.
Yeah, because when you just dissect a dead dude, I mean, that's what it's gonna seem like. It's like, oh, it's just kind of a wrapping. Versus somebody who's alive, it's gonna have a completely different function and at least an apparent function. So I guess they were just going with what they had at the time. The when they were sneaking dead bodies out of the graveyard and open them up and seeing what it was. That's what they concluded, and unfortunately, that has been one of the orthodoxies that's continued up until fairly recently, probably the last century, but really maybe the last 20, 30 years has gotten more recognition. So,
If Ray Peat was still alive and he was sitting next to you, what would you ask him, or what would you say to him?
oh boy, wow. How many questions do I
Yeah,
get?
go ahead. Whatever comes to mind.
Is it like a genie? Do I get three or?
Yeah, just say what would you want to ask him first off the top of your head?
Oh man, I'd ask him if he's tried the carrot salad, first and foremost. Second and third, man, there's just so many questions I'd like to pick his brain about. I really,
It's just you and Ray Peat, and you're having a cup of coffee or five, and you're sitting there, and what do you want to ask him? Like where you're at right now with what you've been learning. What do you want to ask about, or what do you think he would give you some ideas about?
I guess what his thoughts on the aether would be,
Uh huh.
what he thinks the most fundamental sort of input into living organisms, what that is. Some people say it's light, some say it's electromagnetism. I'd like to get his opinion on that. Mm, that I would have to say that question alone would probably be a massive discussion in itself. So I think something along those lines.
What about Walter Russell? You like him? I've heard a lot of people talking about him more.
I don't know who Walter Russell is actually. That's good.
He's a old architect and painter and a Renaissance guy, and he did a lot of stuff with kind of what would be considered new age adjacent stuff about like unified physics and everything with light and electromagnetism and everything. And he created a new periodic table that's like a spiral and everything. You should look him
Hmm.
up, but he'd be interesting to talk to. I think it's an interesting question. Is it what is the fundamental substance of who we are, right? Is it light or what is it, right? Instead of like some people say sound is what we are. We're vibrational sound. That is what creates our structure.
Hmm.
And I think all of these things are just kind of the same thing, just different layers of what's going on, right?
Yeah, more or less. I think that's what's at least that's what it seems, and I think some people describe it as if you imagine everything as a as the ocean and just what we know are just waves or perturbances. I think that's the right word of the ether of this sort of medium that we all exist in, which has seemingly infinite energy and is always present and but at the same time is intelligent and able to facilitate the just sort of the growth of something as complex as the human organism and the society that they've created enough to build missiles to launch at each other and and form nations and everything along those lines. Like what is the fundamental substance of that is very is just an interesting thing that I guess everyone since the dawn of time has tried to explain. And I think with the amount of information that we have now through all these different people and these different cultures who've tried to explain it, we can get a little better of an idea.
Yeah.
Whether or not we'll ever truly know is the other thing. But
I'm kind of committed to the idea. I don't know about you, but kind of a prior that I hold to is that there is something of substance in the universe that exists, right? It's very popular nowadays to think of us like in a matrix simulation or something like that, where that matter is an illusion. It's all so called energy at this core. I think that's wrong and erroneous, but I know that it's very popular right now to kind of like to assume that matter doesn't matter. But I do think that matter does act. There's something of substance does exist. Do you, or are you more of the? I mean, there's different ways to look at it. Gnostics were into this idea, and Platonic, traditions, philosophies, and so forth, and religions and so forth that kind of put a priority on the mind. Everything is a mind. It, and the new age people, it's all the mind. It's all whether they go and say it's a matrix or these are all just different expressions of the same kind of discount on the actual materiality of matter. But I do. It's not really fashionable, but I still believe that there is something that matters about matter. Do you?
yeah, I like to think of it as kind of like water, where um, depending on its state, and pretty much anything else for that matter. Depending on its state, it could be a liquid, it could be a solid, it could be a gas, and that depends on its
Yeah.
energetic state is really what determines that. So I think, in a sense, that solid matter is just that, um, as
But
opposed to
when I say matter, I mean all of it, even the gaseous state, the plasma, all of that, right? I think there's some philosophical traditions that say it's just an illusion. It's information. It's quantum, information fields or some magnetic. energy without an actual substance. And I think that, in keeping with my friend and co-host Dr. Ray Peat, who we've had on the show since the inception of this program, uh, we've explored his theory, his unified theory of physics. And there's one particle, one law, one universe, one field, one force, and it's a magnetic. And what that means is that there is no monocharged particles like protons, neutrons, electrons, but rather every particle is a dipolar little magnet with a positive and a negative pole. And that those positive and negative poles are arranged in different ways structurally to create all the materials and different elements and molecules that we see in the universe. And they express themselves usually in a rather neutral state, as magnets tend to prefer a neutral state. If you play with bar magnets, they'll align themselves in a neutral state according to the opposite poles. But that there can be charged states too, and that's what Western culture erroneously made the mistake of assuming. If there's two charges in electricity, positive, negative, it must be that those are two separate particles, positive, proton and electron and neutron, where they made a mistake of separating something that didn't need to be separated. They could have started with the assumption of, oh, positive, negative. Well, what if that's the same material substance, just in the same pole, right? I mean, just different poles on the same magnet. But all I'm saying is, just to kind of build onto this, is that he always believes that matter is real, that matter has mass and weight and substance, and it's real. It's not an illusion. It's not a quantum field of some kind of like a mystic concept like quantum science turns to evolve into, in my opinion, a lot of times.
Yeah, I think the people saying it's an illusion is more or less trying to get people to understand that it's not necessarily static and solid as in unchangeable. But
Yeah,
it does very much. I mean, if you go and I mean, drive your car 50 miles an hour into a concrete wall, you're gonna get a lesson in
yeah,
solid, things being solid. So
yeah,
uh, I think it just depends on how you look at it. I think it's, just along with what you think and the good doctor, is that it has to be real. It's just, whether it's, what our definition of real and solid
yeah,
is versus
yeah,
illusion. So
yeah. And I think that the ether is a magnetic medium. It's a magnetic ocean of infinitely small particles that are infinite in divisibility. And light is uh, like what you said, a perturbation or a oscillation disturbance that creates a wave motion through this existing magnetic medium of little magnets that
mhm.
oscillate in place alongside the wave of energy that's released by the source. And he often would say, how could it be a stream of, how could light, I'm just kind of exploring this with you because we can then apply it back to biology once we kind of get some of these thoughts, which is like, how could it be photons as particles going into your eye? Like, it's kind of stupid, really, like this idea that like something is a wave particle duality. That sounds like mysticism. Why can't we just say light is a wave motion through an existing magnetic medium of real particles with substance and mass and size? And these little magnets, they oscillate, and it creates the sensation of light that our nerves and our eyes respond to, and it creates that expression in our vision. And it's like, if you were to say it's just like it's actually a particle too, then like you said, if you have a laser pointer in a theater and you point that laser pointer, and those are photon particles going into your eye wherever you see it, then theoretically it'd be like infinite particles coming out of this laser pointer, because there's infinite different angles within the closed theater that one could theoretically be in and see this laser, right? And there's infinite people and infinite vantage points that you could, angles and so forth, and still get. And it just seems like a complete absurdity, the idea that there's like infinite particles streaming out of this little laser pointer, rather than, if you accept, like you said, what so-called ether which was erroneously discarded by traditional mainstream physics, which is ridiculous. And we can get into that as to why that was. But, I think that if you assume the ether, then you would say that light is not photon particles streaming into your eyeball in an infinite stream of particles from a little laser pointer, but rather an excitation in existing magnetic fluid, or kind of an ocean of magnetic little particles that are carrying this excitation into what vibrates onto your eye and your brain.
Yeah, I think that the idea of there being particles almost makes it seem like there's a finite number of particles and that there's a source that can be controlled. So perhaps there's something to do with making people as part of sort of a demoralization process of getting people to think that things like light and everything are somewhat finite,
Right.
and leading into biological systems, and then
Right. Yeah.
can be easily controlled or affected, or maybe not so easily controlled or affected because it's limited by particles, you know.
Yeah. And the idea that, like, entropy, that's kind of, and then, like, the speed limit, that light has a speed limit. Why does it have a speed limit? If you assume it has a speed limit, like, again, you're kind of setting the table for this kind of whole philosophy that undergirds so much of our establishment culture's, presuppositions, that are at least the things that they teach the masses, which is that things fall apart. And if if matter exists, it's just an illusion. It's a dream. It's just a field of information. So there's nothing substance. There's no substance that's you, and there's no substance to what you see. It doesn't really have any meaning. It's all relative, like relativity. And I think all these things are kind of, they are, whether they were intended to be or not, they have been propped up and function as demoralization myths to make people believe that nature, although it's kind of paradoxical because they leave these kind of, uh, they have all kinds of, like, enchanting ideas on paper, like, oh, there's wormholes and there's multiverses, and Marvel comic books is like the official. Marvel comic books is the official science class of the official standard model of physics. By the way, it's like, you go, every time you watch one of those garbage movies, they teach you about something like quantum entanglement. It's like, this is for the masses to learn what our garbage physics wants them to kind of be catechized about for an hour or 2 hours, and then gets a little cartoon jumping around on the screen to help them learn about it. And it's like demoralizing because at the same time, these are very exotic ideas out there within the model. Like, oh, there's antimatter. Let's make a movie about antimatter. Oh, there's quantum entanglement. Oh, there's quarks and all these things. Oh, there's Higgs boson, all these little exotic infinite particles that are all these. It's just a clunky mess of garbage. It's glued together garbage physics. And it keeps the masses distracted with these high concept things like, well, maybe we live in a multiverse, so it doesn't really matter who I am because there's like infinite versions of me. And that means it's kind of stupid, right? And it's like these exotic ideas, but they're nothing that you can actually do to enjoy life with. It just, you know what I mean? Like, no one knows how to do a wormhole because it doesn't exist, first of all. But they don't know, have like any idea to even try to, like, what is that? And the same thing for, like, black holes. That's a fiction. And all these but there are all these exotic things that just make, science and the real world feel approachable and far off from the average person to kind of like explore and learn about the world. It's all kind of like hands off. Look from afar at the black hole concept. It's not real, but you just look how bizarre that is. Look at, all these other notions that are these exotic things that don't actually like have any, um, like thing you can actually like investigate for yourself and experience.
Yeah, I think it's meant to confusing to the point where people go, "Whoa, I'm just going to let an expert handle this."
Yeah.
and then that expert becomes the gatekeeper, and then in order to understand anything or hope to understand anything, you defer to the quote expert, and for whatever it is, and in this case we're talking physics, but it ends up being health and any sort of environmental science, or again anything for that matter. But it's like, because it's complicated, I think a lot of people think that things are meant to be complicated, and I think you can always overcomplicate something, but the real truth is more often not going to be simpler, and usually so simple that it's like there's no way that could be true.
Yeah.
um,
It's a classic thing of like when you have a specialist knowledge thing, they create a guild capture over their little specialty. Like if you ever work for a corporation or organization with an IT department, and you'll
mhm.
say, I remember I worked for a corporation one time for some like a intern thing when I was in college, and they were trying to like we were going to like build a website for a particular brand and in our company, and I was like, okay, we can get this done in about probably within the month. We'll have it all ready to go, or even could be a few weeks, but let's get it all ready to go, and we can get this done and take care of it. And and then they were like, no, we have an IT department. They have to control the whole process. And then they would call into the ID department, and I could tell I don't know much about like web programming too much or anything, but had people there, we could get it done. But it's like, oh no, the IT department has to control the whole process, and they wanted this long, arduous process. When they were, we got to have to run a Pap smear on this website, and we're going to have to do all these different things, and this is going to be this very complicated process, and they know that, and they all do that. It's like a scam artist, It's like, well, we're the IT department. Don't worry, we've got it all calculated. We've got to figure it all out. And it's like year after year after year of waiting for them to string you along and bilk the people with tons and tons of money, And that's kind of like what physics has become and things like that. It's like this Pandora's box, or you're not supposed to look. It's a black box. You're not allowed to go in there and tinker with it because the experts will take care of it, and therefore the people perish because they don't have any knowledge. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's a symptom of there just being so much excess in the Western world, where those sort of guilds, as you say, can even exist, and how most of academia is like, people, they study for 10 years of their life to become a teacher, to teach, so it's ends up being this cycle of where there's so much excess that they're allowed to do that. They can do that because they're not necessary for basic aspects of society, and then they just kind of create these own problems for themselves and others, and it's not a good time.
Well, one of the things that experts have continually told us is kind of the standard model of like dieting and exercise to keep yourself metabolically healthy is so-called calories in, calories out. And that's still the reigning paradigm that most people process things from. But recently you were I saw your thread, you were posting a thread on X to kind of debunk that model. And you did a very good, careful explanation about what's actually going on in that. So would you be able to kind of like explain what you were explaining in your thread in a way that people here on this program could understand? Like, why is it that calories in and calories out, that it's all about how many calories you eat and then how many calories you expel in a day? And that's the only thing that really fundamentally matters most of the time for your weight loss, which then creates this concept where it's like, well, if you're overweight or obese or something like that, it's just a sign that you're lying and you're not expelling enough calories through exercise, and you're not, you're eating too many calories. And that still is the reigning paradigm. But again, this is a kind of a guild myth that has continued for some time, and it has its own intuitive truth to it. And there are kind of truths in it. But maybe you could help us unpack this myth.
Yeah, well, the idea of calories in, calories out isn't wrong in itself. Uh, it's just that when it gets watered down or even oversimplified to the point of just being um, how much you eat, how much you exercise, it takes away a lot of from what's actually going on in the body, and it kind of treats the body as sort of this machine that doesn't adapt, can adapt, and is constantly going to spit out or use up this much energy. And that all you have to do to get rid of the stored energy is to lower the intake and or increase the consumed or the expended calories through just exercise. And so again, it's not inherently wrong. It's just the way to go about it of restricting your food, exercising a lot isn't particularly efficient. Now, it's going to work for people who are young. So if you're 16 to 22, your hormones are through the roof. You're just naturally healthy, and or
What does
you're.
that mean exactly? If without going too far off, what does that mean?
I think that means when you're younger, you're just naturally resistant to.
You said
Uh,
hormones go through the roof. What hormones are going through the roof when you're young that makes you resistant to obesity?
I think it's going to be mostly thyroid. When you go through puberty, you get progesterone, testosterone, some of the androgens, and pregnenolone too, just as the sort of first step away from cholesterol.
So does your
Um,
progesterone increase when you hit puberty or decrease in relative relation to the other hormones?
that's a great question. I want to say it increases, and that's
Because
what.
I always thought like little kids are like little progesterone balls, and then as you get to teenage years, the reason why people get whacked out in terms of acne and hormone insanity is because they get estrogen shooting up in that time, which kind of like it removes a lot of that youthful joy and good positive vibes that little kids naturally have usually if they're healthy.
I don't
So
know how much of it is progesterone specifically, because I
right,
know progesterone does drive the sort of the secondary characteristics you'll see in females. So I don't know if that's something that's going to be present in large amounts in adolescence. Anyone not
okay,
that hasn't gone through puberty. Again, I think it'd be a little more upstream. So predominantly thyroid and pregnenolone. Again, I'm not an
yeah,
expert on this. Like
yeah.
I'm not a nerd. I'm not a hormone nerd necessarily. But just in general, when you're
Well, whoever
younger,
write those Twitter threads you make sure is he's pretty good.
yeah, yeah.
Man,
So
I mean, whoever's writing your Twitter threads connects light to sound and colors
I need to
and
pay him more.
thyroid. Yeah, I mean, this guy. Where'd you
Well,
find him?
it's just
China?
I have Mr. Ling. I got my assistant Ling. Yeah, I so in regards to the hormones, I'm just saying when you're younger, you are going to be more resistant to the stress hormones. Now, what
Yeah.
that means in regards to what positive hormones you're producing, what progesterone, pregnenolone, DHEA, all those, I can't necessarily speak to that. I haven't necessarily studied that too much in kids, so that's why I'm sort of saying I can't. Uh, I can't go too much into that, but
The kids must have a tremendous amount of CO2 retention, right? Because they can like heal their limbs like little salamanders, like little, right? 2-year-olds and stuff.
yeah. So I think that kids, I don't think they rely as much on hormones because I think they're just base metabolic function with is going to be less damaged over time. Um, and
Well,
so
they're
again,
relying on the thyroid hormone, right? I mean,
yeah, they're more reliant more on thyroid. They're going to be have just better mitochondrial function as is, and hormones are sort of there to support and improve on changes that are already occurring within the mitochondria, as opposed to being like absolutely fundamental in themselves compared to nutrients and molecules like CO2. Yeah, so when you do go into a calorie deficit, that is by nature stressful. Any lack of energy is going to be stressful, because eventually, if you kept on that path, you would die. If you just kept under eating and under eating and under eating, you would eventually starve, and you wouldn't have enough energy to keep going. And so, in older people, people who aren't necessarily children, and people who don't replace their hormones artificially. So, if you're artificially replacing your hormones, that's a big reason why, as a guy, you could blast testosterone, and because it's such a powerful anti-cortisol substance, it counteracts and suppresses a lot of those catabolic effects of cortisol. You could go through this. You could go through a tremendous calorie deficit and not necessarily experience the muscle wasting. Um, and then sort of same with kids and teenagers. Mostly when I say teenagers, the 16 to 20 range. You got a lot of those guys on the internet who they say, well, calories in, calories out works because I'm 18 years old and I can lift weights for 3 hours a day and barely eat anything, and look at me. Well, it's like, well, that should be sort of a default for someone that age. It doesn't necessarily apply to a 40-year-old woman, or even a 30-year-old man for that matter. Just because they possess less of that anti-catabolic, um, the hormone profile is less suited to deal with that sort of stress. And so when it comes to calories in, calories out, the focus is usually on the calories in, and the calories out is sort of a somewhat of an afterthought. People will go and say, oh, well, if you do this amount of exercise, you'll burn that many calories, which in itself, the whole notion of being able to precisely calculate the amount of calories you need and the amount of calories you burn is a little bit preposterous. I mean, they're guesses, they're sort of ballpark answers in themselves, or values in themselves. So it doesn't one, it's not particularly accurate. And through modulating the quote calories out part just through exercise, you're sort of missing missing the point, because exercise, when you look at it, it doesn't burn that many calories compared to just existing. Your brain is tremendously, it's a furnace. It's just constantly burning through glucose, and at a rate that not even your muscles through vigorous exercise can come close to replicating. There's a thing where they say chess players in tournaments burn an absurd amount of calories, just through the amount of thinking that they have to do and the amount of brain power that's involved in something like that. The alternative strategy that I think a lot of people are advocating for now is more of a increasing your calories out through increasing your basal metabolic rate. So increasing your energy expenditure just to be alive, which when you think about it is a whole lot
What do
easier.
you mean by basil? Like the plant, the herb? How much basil are you eating every day? Is what
You,
the key is.
it's different than your oregano metabolic rate or your cilantro
Thyme
metabolic rate. Your basal metabolic rate is
or your rosemary's baby's metabolic rate or thyme.
exactly.
So what is basal metabolic rate?
Well, in order to exist, so
Remember,
to
this is
just
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for adults, my show. So we're going to go
for
through
adults,
everything.
okay.
Yeah, sometimes we're going to go high into fascia light, and then sometimes we're going to go into what is basal.
Basal.
Okay,
Okay. Yeah. Well,
so
just
go super.
existing,
Yeah,
just if I think a lot of people don't appreciate how much it takes for you to exist
yeah.
and to just breathe, and even just lay, when you're laying down at night in your bed, just think about that. Everything that has to go go on to keep you alive.
Oh, tell me about it. I've had bad sleep lately. It's been awful. So
Really, really. Well, I
yeah,
actually maybe this is something you can think about when you're there, and I'll help
yeah.
give you a little appreciation, a little gratitude
Oh,
to
I hate it. I feel like if I don't sleep, it feels like I'm gonna die. You know,
oh it certainly
it's
is
horrible.
because you'll die of a lack of sleep before starving. So you can go days without food, days without sleep, not so much. So it's up there in the priorities. But just existing in itself takes a tremendous amount of energy to sustain all your cells because you're not necessarily a static being. You are constantly replacing cells that are dying at an astronomical rate. I mean, you can't even wrap your head around it because it's going on, and it's been going on since your inception, and it'll go on till the day you die. And in order to do that, in order to grow a new cell, prune a dead cell, recycle it, it takes energy. And the same goes for anything else in your body. And in order for there to be any sort of change, you need energy. And so the focus with basal metabolic rate is because this is going on sort of behind the curtains without you having to do anything. It doesn't necessarily require any I don't say any work, but it doesn't require any extra work. So if you quote raise your basal metabolic rate, so you increase the amount of energy that it takes to survive, or to not to survive, but just to exist. I think that's a better word. Um, then that the calories out portion of the calories in, calories out is going to go through the roof. And what happens when you restrict the calories in, because again, energy is always being monitored, it's always um, being tracked. And as soon as there's a dip, as soon as there's a deficiency, your body, because at one point in time, we didn't have this system to keep us alive where we could go to the grocery store and we lived in
Uh,
safe neighborhoods. And so it's always trying to keep you alive, um, regardless of your goals.
yeah,
If your goals are, wow, I want to look cute in this outfit or whatever, I want to impress mentally ill people online.
yeah,
Um, then it doesn't care. It's saying, hey, buddy, we're just trying to keep you alive, and
yeah,
we're going to drastically lower that basal metabolic rate in order to, as a response to that drop in the input calories.
yeah.
So when you start eating less, eventually you are going to start burning less calories, just as a means to keep you
And it
alive.
feels like a giant cluster F, right? Because basically, so many people who are obese because they dieted. They've been eating calorie restricted too long or the wrong foods, right?
Yeah, and I think that that in general, they say, oh no, there's people are eating way too many calories nowadays. One, I think simplifying food simply to calories is disingenuous. Um,
What is
but
a
a lot,
calorie, by the way? Sorry, don't lose your thought. What is a calorie?
so I think the definition of a calorie is how much is some amount of energy to heat up a certain volume of water at a certain point. I can't remember
Okay.
the exact. So even in itself, a calorie is sort of this convoluted measurement that we kind of
Yeah.
made up, and it is there's some rationale behind it, but it doesn't exactly translate 100% to the
So are
human.
you a calorie denier or
I don't really know what to think. I think that there's one. It doesn't necessarily matter the idea of calories, but I'm not necessarily going to deny, because when you say calorie denier, people think, oh my God, you deny everything. Like you deny that there's no energy, whatsoever, as opposed to just denying the construct of a calorie uh, in its modern
well, how
form.
would we look at a calorie from what I was saying earlier about Dr. Yu's theory that every particle is a magnetic particle, little magnet with positive and negative poles. What's a calorie in relation to that? Could you
You know,
maybe?
that's an amazing question. I think just off the top of my head, probably something to do with either the strength of the field, the magnetic field, or possibly the um, some sort of gradient where there's
Interesting.
a separation. Maybe it's an ability to separate the positive and negative, so you do get that gradient and you get that
Interesting.
positive and negative charge. That will be my guess. Again, that's a good question. That's gonna.
Food is little. If food is just a conglomerate of different little magnets in different structural forms, then that's just it. It's just interesting to think. Our bodies are little magnets, and each of our particles in our tissue have their own resonant frequency, their own vibrational frequency. That you kind of want to have a coherent resonance of all of your tissue. And that's good health, good harmonious. Every tissue is vibrating in its right resonance in relationship to its role in the body, and it's communicating all the time. And we're little magnets, and our thoughts. That's why you were saying before we started recording how important it is to think and be hopeful, right? Because your mind has its own resonance. Every thought you have, if you think of a pink elephant right now, your brain and your whole body, because your body is little magnetic particles and they contribute to that experience of consciousness. It's like a magnetic field, right? And we experience this sense of awareness, which is really tied into magnetic field of every little particle in our body, kind of creating a meta magnetic field of our whole body's magnetic field. But our liver has its own little magnetic field, and it has its own little frequency that it vibrates on. And the thought of a pink elephant, or the thought of a banjo, or the thought of healing from an illness, or visualizing yourself jumping through the fields after you're sick, or whatever, all of that stuff, is has its own unique vibrational pattern, and you can resonate on that. You can have your body kind of truly believe it in its whole body and its whole being, and vibrate on that same like vibrational kind of coherence that kind of like harmonizes it for that purpose, right? And I think that's important here, because I think we're getting to something with the calorie thing. It's not what we may have thought. In other words,
Yeah, and that's not even taking into account the sun, the
yeah,
earth,
yeah,
um, and so the whole calories in, calories out assumes the human system is a closed system that is only
exactly,
by
yeah,
the calories in, and then eventually the calories out, and that calories out is, oh, we can perfectly calculate that. I don't think anyone thinks necessarily perfectly, but even then, it's probably such a obscure, it's probably such an inaccurate measurement that it's not even really worth
yeah,
measuring in itself. I think what would be more important, what would be more uh, accurate, would be your own uh, feelings of satiety, and then how your own body responds, how you
yeah,
feel, because that can't be wrong. Your body has no alternate agenda. It's not trying to sell you a program. It's not trying to scrape, get engagement, or get views or whatever. It's trying to keep you alive.
yeah.
And when you eat,
And
I
none of
mean,
it, and you would agree that none of the hormones, even the stress molecules, are not bad people. They're good people. They're all trying to do the right thing, right?
yeah, yeah. I'm not of the camp that you should artificially alter hormones too much. Again,
What
they
I
are.
yeah, I'm just saying, like even those hormones that people always talk about as the boogeymans, like estrogen and cortisol and adrenaline and prolactin, these boogeymen that people in the Ray Peat. I'm not saying they're doing that. I'm just saying it's important that we don't treat these things as like they're the villains of our body trying to get us. No, they're trying to make a bad situation better, right? They're trying to heal,
Yeah, if you're
right?
starving, if you're legitimately starving and you're searching for food, and you need the energy to do that and to keep going, you're going to need cortisol. You're going to need
Yeah,
adrenaline. The everything has to have context to it, and to where these people demonize hormones for, in absolutes, they say, well, this hormone is evil, and you have to do everything you can to lower it. Um, that's sort of it's not far off the traditional, I don't want to say traditional, but the allopathic model of just treating the symptom. Is you have
Right.
to understand why that is occurring in the first place, because your body's not going to waste energy on something that's not absolutely necessary, and it's not going to do something that's counterproductive. I think that's another issue in itself, is people have been psyoped into believing that, oh, for no reason your body does this. You're about your autoimmune condition for no reason at all. Your body's eating itself or attacking itself, as opposed to maybe looking into it a little further and
So,
asking
for
why.
example, people who have chronic sinus issues, where particularly like you mentioned at night when it's more stressful, right? And they're like they lay down and then their nose gets more congested or whatever chronically. What is the body trying to do there?
In regards to the
Like
increase,
just the more difficulty to breathe that sinuses being inflamed and congested create. What's it trying to do?
well, my
Is it trying
initial,
to retain CO2 or something,
I
or what is?
I think what's probably going on is, in a lot of cases with sinus inflammation, there's unless you're breathing perfectly clean air, there's always some sort of particulate matter or
Yeah,
potentially mold spores or bacteria even that you're breathing in. And if you don't necessarily, if you're sort of in a deficiency, in an energy deficient state, and you can't necessarily handle these stressors uh, easily, you might have sort of an exaggerated response. You might have uh, a focused response like that. And if the stressor is concentrated in the sinuses, um, and then there's just a lot of factors when it comes to something like that, which could be environmental. It could be your bedroom has crappy air or something. There's some mold in your behind your bed. So there's actually a lot that goes into that. But I think at the end of the day, it is adapting the best it can with the
you
resources
mean
that.
like you talking like there could be mold, like someone just looks underneath their bed, they see mold, or you mean like mold inside the wall or something? That's like impossible to find out for most people.
I
Jeez,
don't think,
it's like a horror
unless,
movie.
yeah, it is, unless you're a bedwetter. I don't know if and I don't want to make fun of anybody, but
Yeah,
uh
yeah,
but it's, I mean, but even then, if I'm sure in Florida, those summer nights, you sweat, and
yeah.
who knows about your bed, how much sweat and moisture it absorbs over the course
Oh
of
my God.
a
Yeah,
Florida summer.
yeah,
So it could be in the mattress, it could be in the bed. I'm just saying, it could be anywhere where there's not a lot of light and any amount of moisture.
yeah.
There is a potential for mold, and even in the ducts, depending on where you live, you might have mold or a bunch of dust and bacteria in your air conditioning or your sort of central heating um,
Right.
system. So it could be that too. It just
Yeah.
uh, it just, in summary, it's just, you're going to be doing the best you can with the resources you have. There could also be nutrient deficiencies that don't allow you to relax and not be inflamed.
Yeah.
And so the inflammation is sort of like, well, this is all we have, so we got to
What is
use that.
inflammation?
Well, I think inflammation, classically, or um, people associate it with swelling. So when you swell, when you get a lot of blood to an area, usually in response to an injury of some sort, a stressor. This could be, I mean, you roll your ankle, you're going to have inflammation in your ankle. And this is an attempt to prune away all the damaged cells, the dead cells that maybe um, were, were generated in that sort of injury, help take them away, and then help provide the nutrition for their replacements, for their repair. And um, in regards to infections, a lot of times that involves immune cells, a lot of oxidative stress to kill microorganisms, oxidative stress actually kill your own tissue sometimes, the damaged tissue, to prune it, to sort of break it off and hose it down, if you will, and so the inflammation is in itself an intelligent response to the stress. If you're chronically inflamed, I think you do need to ask the question why. Where is this stressor coming from? Why am I not able to repair at a acceptable rate without inflammation, as opposed to looking at inflammation as something that, oh, I just need to pop a pill and suppress it. And, oh,
Yeah,
my ankles, I'm no longer red, or my ankles
like
no longer
aspirin.
swell.
Like
Yeah,
aspirin. A lot of people want to pop pills like aspirin.
yeah. I don't necessarily have too much of a problem with aspirin, but I think if you're constantly having to use aspirin for something that keeps coming up, I think you're kind of doing yourself a disservice by continuing to use it.
Yeah. So why? So let's continue with this unpacking of the calorie in, calorie out thing. Um, it seems like this is a conundrum because sometimes Ray Peat will say things like, we're eating a lot less calories than we should be if we're healthy, happy, well fed, nutritionally well met needs. We should be we're under eating, and then there's this other thought that sometimes Ray Peat will say if people are overweight or having problems, well, you need to stop eating. But then in other interviews he'll say, oh, I don't want people to fast, right? You don't want people to fast long term, but oftentimes he's said in public interviews uh, to just stop eating if you're trying to lose weight. And it's like, so sometimes he's saying, and I know there's all kinds of contexts, so I'm not trying to do some kind of gotcha point, but the point is just like it can be confusing trying to understand a paradigm like Ray Peat's because sometimes he's saying, we as a species in our society today are not eating enough calories. We're like chronically low calorie. We need, and that's the problem is that you can't resurrect the thyroid engine nice and strong if you don't start eating the right amount of minerals and nutrients and vitamins in your daily intake, especially if you're young and trying to get going with life. And then at the same time, there's these counter messages from the same sources in the bioenergetic world and Ray Peat saying, oh, yeah, cut your calories down to a small amount for a while or, whatever. So, how does that make sense to you?
Well, I think a lot of people are over consuming calories nowadays because the food that they're eating is so devoid of anything other than the macronutrients, just because of the way the agricultural system has been industrialized so much. The macronutrients, the raw calories, has been the focus, and the micronutrients and everything else that goes into the actual organism that is being grown and cultivated and consumed eventually sort of thrown out the window because it doesn't really matter for profit margins. As long as they get it, they sell it, and it has a certain amount of calories to keep people alive. They're going to keep producing it. So people overeat because uh, it, the standard amount of food has a certain amount of whatever the basic minerals and vitamins are, with that is somewhat diluted in comparison to what it could be, possibly what it was in the past when the soils weren't so dead, when animals were getting more sunlight, the cows were able to go outside and get sunlight, and the chickens too, and pigs and everything. Um, and so it's a combination of a deficiency of nutrition in the food itself, except for calories. The calories kind of remain the same, increase a little bit. Everything else just went down, and as well as an increase in stressors, where before the stressors were more than likely under eating, there not being enough food, um, potentially sanitation and everything. But now we're exposed to all sorts of chemical stress, emotional stress, just from trying to exist in this world and sort of in a prison somewhat. The modern world is in many ways a prison. Um, and so the going back to the idea of cravings, and you're always going to know how much you need. If you need a certain amount of, say, magnesium or sodium just to survive, um, you're going to try to get that through whatever means possible. Um, and if that involves consuming 4,000 calories of crap, you're probably going to do that just to stay alive. And I think that's why people they crave salty foods, because that sodium is what they need to exist.
Yeah, but even within the Ray Peat world, a lot of people who do the classic things he's recommended for people: milk, orange juice, shellfish, cheese, coffee, and sugar, and fruit, except like 90% of the fruit that's in the grocery store. So it's like a really hard thing for a lot. I'm constantly having a mind for how to make, because I think that Ray is onto something, and that's why I kind of grabbed the steering wheel of my show and pulled it in a different direction here, because I thought it was a pressing thing in this direction and investigating this more and more through the years. But I think he's onto something. And when I met him and interviewed him back when I first met him a few years ago, I didn't know to the extent that he was right. I knew he was right. I didn't know to what extent. And I think he's a lot more right than I thought originally. But I'm constantly, and I know he was too, but thinking how to scale this to the average person. And almost every person I know or hear about online who tries this stuff, they don't lose weight. They gain a lot of weight. It's notorious for a weight gaining diet, and it's like they're slogging, which is a rather kind of boring diet on the fundamentals. They're not even going into, ice cream parties every day, but just, chugging your milk and your orange juice and your your carrot salad and your mushrooms and all this stuff. People do this and they gain weight. They gain weight, and they're not overdoing it. They're not doing 5,000 calories of milk. It's like boring. No one would want to do that really, anyways, unless they're really active or whatever. But what do you say? I mean, I'm sure you've seen people have the same response. A lot of people, including people who are, who are big advocates. We talk about these things, but privately, and they say, yeah, there's a lot of people just gain weight so much on this way of eating. So how do you actually scale? I mean, I'm asking a multifaceted question, but the problem pragmatically is, how do you scale? If Ray Peat has been brought into the universe at this time to help be a catalyst for radical revolution of the human mind and the spirit and the body and everything, which I think could be a huge part of what he did and can do with what we do forward with what he started. How do you actually get this to actually scale realistically? Because if it's so hard for people who actually like meticulously do this at a nerdy level and do their little, all these little meticulous little steps, and they're not able to lose weight, how the hell is this going to ever scale to the revolution? The masses, the people who are the longshoremen who are boycotting right now, the people who are millions of working class MAGA or Robert Kennedy people or Biden. It doesn't matter. Not, I'm just saying all these people out here that are just dying of stupid diseases and idiocy healthcare. And it's like, okay, do this, 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 and it just wrecks them worse on some level. Maybe not internally. Maybe they look great, but they've gained 50 pounds, and maybe, whatever. It's like there needs to be more order to the madness, and we've got to investigate it, and we've got to figure it out, because we can't send people down a rabbit trail that they can't possibly figure out. They will go back to low carb and low calorie and other things, or just nihilistic eating, and that's not going to help anybody. The civilization is going to collapse.
Yeah, I think the immediate, I guess the simple answer for a lot of those people would be they the people that find Ray Peat and bioenergetics, a lot of times they're sort of on their last leg in regards to health. They're not exactly pillars of health when they come to them or come to some of the
Are they
ideas.
really? I'm not trying to argue, but are they really on their last leg of health? They're usually younger. I don't see like 80-year-olds doing this.
Well,
You
I
mean
think there,
like they've tried everything to fix a health problem and it hasn't worked? Is that what you mean by that? Not
yeah,
like they're about to die.
no,
I
no,
don't.
they're
Yeah,
not necessarily
yeah,
about to
yeah,
die, but they have some sort of, I don't want to
yeah,
say a minor health issue, but their health isn't is
yeah,
leaves something to be desired. They try everything and it doesn't work. Eventually, then they stumble upon this. I think in those cases where they do gain weight, it's probably a matter of their basal metabolic rate sort of stabilizing, and it was for some period of time during whatever they were going through was low enough to keep them alive. And when they start introducing foods that are naturally going to be higher calorie, and they sort of leave behind this fear of of glucose, especially,
yeah.
and that's something that when you are sick, your ability to metabolize glucose is going to be affected. And so when they reintroduce glucose and reasonable amounts, they might not process it as well as they could. And I think something that uh, I've noticed is that there's not a lot other than in the bioenergetic Ray Peat sphere. And there's not a lot of other things in regards to sunlight and movement and
Yeah.
other sort of stressors. So when these people make these changes, and they say, well, you know, what happened? I started drinking a bunch of coffee and drinking a bunch of milk and cheese and honey and sugar, and I gained a bunch of weight. It's like, well, you know, are you walking? You know, are you active? Are you getting a lot of sunlight? And a lot of these things are sort of put on the back burner, which are definitely important and arguably equally as important as calories. Um, and then a lot of times their mindset too is if you're sick, your mind is going to be shaped to think a certain way, and you know potentially what happens is when you're still in that mindset and you just can continue to consume more energy, it just might not express itself in its best form. So I think it's just a matter of them recovering, uh, and that being sort of the recovery process is putting on some weight, and then sort of ignoring things that are important.
How much movement in the day, and what kind of movement, and how it's strenuous should the average person do to do the bioenergetic approach to life rightly? And then also, how much sunlight should they get? Should it be 20 minutes of morning sun a day, or should it be bare minimum 20 minutes and hopefully hours and hours of walking around with your body exposed to the sunlight throughout the day?
I think that would be ideal if we could all move to Costa Rica and just walk on the beach every day. That would be ideal, but it's not necessarily feasible for most people. I think just getting as much as you can. I don't want to necessarily put a limit or a minimum on it, in regards to sunlight at least, and then moving. It's going to depend a lot on where you are, in regards to your body composition. If you're if you're 100 pound girl, it's going to be a lot easier to walk than say like a 200 pound male. Um, so I think in regards to movement, lower intensity stuff is going to be better. Maybe plugging in some high intensity things that you enjoy, whether that be sports, lifting weights, any sort of resistance training.
Yeah,
I think the goal is to do something that's not, you're not necessarily doing it for the sake of doing it. You're doing it because you enjoy it.
yeah,
And one thing that you can do is just find a, if you live somewhere where there's some sort of wilderness nearby, just go for a walk out in the wilderness. Obviously not, don't get lost and don't become a missing person, but
yeah,
um, that just doing something like that where you're getting sunlight, you're you're watching the birds, you're sort of strolling along the path itself isn't
yeah,
necessarily, you're not just walking around a track in circles for hours. It's mentally engaging. I think something like that is going to be far more powerful. And same for something like lifting weights, or if you're lifting weights in a gym, to me that's kind of boring, especially under artificial light. Um, and I have a home gym outside. It's it's nothing pretty to look at. But it does its function, and I get to work out outside amongst the trees, and that's fun for me. So I think that similar to calories, it's gonna vary per individual, and you are gonna know when you've had too much, when you've had enough. And I think that the important thing is to try it. Try going for a walk, try getting some sunlight, and then your body's gonna naturally tell yourself, okay, you've had enough. If you plopped a person from North Dakota down into Costa Rica and said, okay, go, you need at least 6 hours of midday sun. They're going to get, and it's assuming they're white or don't have a lot of color on their skin, they're going to get burned pretty bad. Um, versus just saying, okay, just see how much you can tolerate. And at first, it might be only 10, 15, 20 minutes, but eventually you'll adapt and be able to tolerate more. So again,
But
I
the
like
average person working 9 to 5, I mean, it's hard to get sunlight, and you think about like I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just saying it's like we got to really think hard about how to do these things for people. They're
it
just
is, it is.
enslaved. They're enslaved to a lot of situations that are just high stress hellscapes. And then you think about I live in Florida and we like trails walking here, but sometimes, man, it's so I'm learning, as I go that like we had Blue, now known as Helen on X. We had her on a few weeks ago on the show. She had a good point about hot humidity is a high stressor that can contribute to causing obesity, being out in that. So it's like, what are you doing? Like, are you shooting yourself in the foot if you're like in some superhuman, swampy, hot as hell Florida trail, for an hour or two? Like, are you like depleting your CO2 retention by panting in that humidity? You know what I mean? If you're trying to improve your health, or is it better to just do it anyway? It's like, do the good outweigh the bad of that, in an environment like hot, humid, muggy, sea level areas, not just Florida, but the whole South and stuff.
Yeah, that's perfectly that's another thing that the whole calories in, calories out sort of misses, which is pretty important, is your environment where you're living. And when it's hot, you just shut down. There's a reason why. I mean, there's essentially no successful uh, countries that exist along the equator. It's pretty much people who just hang out on the beach or just lounge as much as they can because that heat is oppressive. It's like
And
when
the
it's hot.
humidity is the worst part about it, The humidity is the worst. It's just stuff. It's just so it's just a grossness to it. It feels like you're not supposed to be there.
Yeah, it's definitely something where you it's for me it's not enjoyable. I definitely feel my brain, my IQ ticks down a
Yeah.
bunch.
Ooh. Yeah.
Just and like my sleep and my just everything is just sort of miserable. So I think that's important too. And I'm not going to tell people to where to move. Some people like it better. Some people tolerate it better. There's some for some people maybe that excess heat is good to keep their basal temperature up to facilitate a higher basal metabolic rate. But I think once you get to a certain point, it becomes a limiter because the
Yeah. It
brain is
stresses it. Yeah.
the brain and the body can it's a lot easier to heat itself than it
Yeah.
is to cool itself. And I think that's an interesting
And Helen was saying that your body will actually store fat or hold on to fat around like belly fat where your organs and stuff are in the presence of hot, humid sea level heat as a means of protecting and insulating the organs, right? So, it's kind of funny. Like, you have the thermos mug, you can put hot coffee in it and it'll keep it hot, or you can put super cold and it'll keep it cold. It's like seems like that's what's going on there. So sometimes it's counterintuitive because you would think, you know, if you're like, in a really subtropical or tropical, hot, humid, muggy sea level environment, your body would want to get rid of excess fat storage. But she was making a point that at some point it's an insulator for the outside heat when it's so hot, and humid.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's hard to use body fat as an indicator of health. I think a lot of people try to, um, but for the most part, it's protective. And if we didn't have central heating, if we
But
didn't have constant access to food, that fat would actually help keep us alive, as opposed to being something that is something we want to get rid of no matter what. Um,
well,
so I
people
think,
have been taught that obesity is the number one indicator of more high mortality and morbidity. And that's drilled into everybody. You're saying that's not necessarily correct?
yeah, I think there's something called the obesity paradox, which if and I think this points more towards people who are underweight. When you're underweight, you actually, I think, have a higher likelihood of dying than someone who's overweight, because again, fat, as she was saying, is an insulator. It's also physical protection, so it cushions everything. It cushions your organs, and it also acts as a reservoir for uh, toxins to be dissolved in. So instead of going into your brain, instead of going into your vital organs, they can be stored in your fat and then metabolized over time, as opposed to flooding yourself with whatever it is you're exposed to at once. So in many ways, it is protective, and I just think that it's in itself is not necessarily the problem, as opposed to being a
Yeah, it's
canary in the
interesting.
coal mine.
It's interesting how our body physiology typically seems to be less anti-fat than other people would think, or something. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's not something that is as bad as people are saying. That's what I'm trying to say is unless you're young, unless you've replaced your hormones entirely, being super lean, and this could be for a guy or for a girl, is is dangerous, especially as you get older. You think about your parents, grandparents, if they're skinny and then they have something happen to them, they get sick, they have some sort of injury, and they don't necessarily have that store of energy that little bit to protect them and insulate them, keep them warm. Uh, their chances of survival go down, and you can when you look at an animal in the wild that's it's got some beef to it, you say, man,
Yeah.
he's eating good, he's healthy, versus one who's, man, he's shredded, right? You can see his muscles, you say, man, that guy needs to eat, even though you can see, his muscles are really defined and everything. He's kind of walking on a tightrope. uh and if he goes a couple days, couple weeks without a meal, I mean, depends on the animal, he might not be alive, as opposed to the one with the little extra on him is going to have more of a buffer.
So how should America be saved from its metabolic wreckage? Like, how does it start? How do we get like Walmart's where people who are sitting in those uh, those little those little buggies, the little electronic scooters, and they're very excessively overweight, and they've got oxygen masks on and stuff, and their little noses and stuff. How do we get those people or their children who are headed that direction to like be able to understand the bioenergetic type stuff and actually apply it and not just give up because they're just gaining weight or not losing weight? How do we make this simplified formula or something? Not that it's one formula for all. But we have to account for that fact that there's no doctors or people who will really be able to help guide them through the navigation of all of these different factors. Like, you know, if you do this, it'll create this stress. If you do it that way, it'll create that stress. And therefore, you're just shooting yourself in the foot in the dark.
That's a great question. Just because that's a huge task, um, and I think if you started at at more or less the environmental level, so my first thing would probably be changing as many artificial light sources as possible and making them circadian friendly, so making them mimic sunlight. So you know how the whole thing about the old time street lights were amber and now
Yeah,
they're like bright white, they're blue and everything.
yeah.
That's true for pretty much any place of work, anywhere you any retail store and anywhere you go buy food. All these places, and even in people's homes, they have these artificial light sources which are completely skewing people's internal clocks, internal rhythms, and turning them into this incoherent, confused mess inside. And that's without even eating anything. That's without even being exposed to.
You think the light issue is bigger than the diet issue for people?
I don't want to say it's bigger. I think they have equal
Wow.
importance. I do think that they're important. You have the whole Colonel Cruz's brigade that has the helio dudes. Their uh, their whole thing is the sun, and everything is the sun, and they kind of take it to an extreme where, well, diet doesn't matter, and that's just not true. The sun and its cycles are paramount, and you're never going to be tougher than the sun. You're never going to out tough the sun. Um, so we are sort of at its mercy, and we should live our life according to the sun. And I think seasonally, I don't think that work schedules, like for instance, if you're living in a higher latitude and that in the wintertime it gets dark at 3 o'clock, I think that's when the workday should really end. You should be
Yeah.
forced to work till 6. I mean, of course, there's going to be exceptions here and there with various jobs and everything, but I think for the most part, we have to synchronize our lives with the sun because without it, we wouldn't be here. And then you can also address the food supply. Not that these things are exclusive. I think that they're going to complement each other because if you just did one,
Yeah.
it'd make a difference. But when you combine both of them, it's sort of it's a synergy there. And in regards to food, I think it's just removing as many unnecessary chemicals that are involved in the cultivation process, or the pesticides, herbicides, artificial fertilizers,
How
stopping.
important how important is the artificial pesticides, herbicides, and that factor compared to the nutrition that you're eating? In other
I
words, you're like, is there more damage eating conventional fresh fruit than you're actually getting benefit from eating
uh,
them?
I think that it's not the dose, the dose of like having one pack of berries. It's the incessant uh, stream of things that you face, and if you're exposed to a stress or a toxin, and you're healthy, you're going to be able to
I'm just,
rebound.
yeah, I'm just thinking again. I'm not. I'm still thinking about the average normal person, right? That's being destroyed all around us, right? And it's like you tell them, okay, do the Ray Peat stuff. Well, they're still low on money. There's a catastrophic inflation. So if they're going to be exposed to excessive, I mean, I know they can wash them and stuff, so that's that. But like they're going to be getting a lot of pesticide because they're not going to be able to afford organic. They literally would be homeless in a week if they tried to buy the amount of fruit that Ray Peat's recommending for the average person. You know what I mean? And then most of these orange juice brands are garbage. They taste like awful. So you try to get conventional food. The average person can't afford that. They just to switch over to organic and eat the amount of fruit instead of the kind of nuts and seeds and seed oil crap they were eating before, and now they're going to try to like shift a lot of that over to. They're not going to be able to afford organic cheeses a lot, maybe sometimes, but not every time. And they're not going to be able to afford like organic milk all the time. Maybe it'll be sometimes, but not every time. And they're not going to be able to afford the organic white button mushroom and the organic orange juice brand and the organic orange juice or oranges and the organic that. And they're not going to be able to go because you go to the farmers and they're charging you higher than the organic store at Whole Foods or something or your local store. So is I guess what I'm saying is it's still if you're going to eat a voluminous amount of fruit, but it's conventional, is that still worth doing, even though you're going to get a shit ton of pesticides and stuff?
I think you'd have to be strategic about it, and there's some fruits that are sprayed more. I think a lot of berries because they're ripe for the picking for
Yeah,
insects or whatever else wants to eat them. Maybe splurge for the organic there
yeah.
and
Like, what do
don't.
you do if you're at like I don't know where you get your stuff, but like if you're in a Walmart somewhere, you have to get. What would you go? What would you get?
If I was at a Walmart and
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of the classic, because everybody has their regional stores that have all kinds of wonderful, really good deals on mangoes or whatever. But I'm thinking like a standardized store experience for everybody in America who's not a millionaire. You're going to like a Walmart maybe if you have to. It's kind of like an average of what's going on, and it's like, what do you go for? In terms of the produce aisle, what are you going to do for that for a week of eating or whatever? What are you going to grab?
for something like that, I think again trying to be strategic about what fruit you buy. Maybe not going for the fresh squeezed or the for the orange juice because, like you said, most of them are garbage. And I think starches are fine. Again, if they're organic, but even if they're not,
Starches.
I think for the most part, like what like rice, potatoes, easily digestible wheat, so sourdough.
Are those
Um,
kind? Are they kind of? Doesn't Ray say there's a kind of obesogenic though? I mean, for people who are most of these people in America are going to be needed to probably lose weight, or maybe they don't. Maybe they just need to eat the starch and be happy.
yeah, I think they can be obesogenic to an already stressed individual who maybe
Yeah,
doesn't digest them very well, and then they're
yeah.
fermented, and then the bacteria, they have a party, and then you got to deal with the stress of the endotoxin, and that in itself, contributes to the metabolic syndrome. Um, and I that's another good question with what would you buy at a Walmart? And to be quite honest, I'd have to be there and go there to a Walmart and see what they have to
Well, where
make
do
an.
you go? Do you go to grocery stores? Do you source it at a market or something or
Yeah,
farmer?
I go to grocery stores. I think if you can avoid a Walmart, hey, maybe Walmart does have some good things. I'm sure.
Well, let's just go with what you go with. So let's just talk about what you do at your
Um,
store. What would you get at your store? You get like I mean, is there like in terms of the safe conventional fruit? Are you going to stay away from all conventional grown fruit?
um, I think oranges are okay. Citrus is all right. Again, berries are something you have to watch out for.
Yeah,
Um,
apples stay away, right? Pears stay away.
I think
Plums,
they're.
peaches
I
stay away. But all these starchy things, right? Pectin will kill you.
I think those are okay. I think that's sort of
Yeah,
overblown by there's a division of the Ray Peat world that's a hypochondriac and obsesses over little things like tiny amounts of pectin or tiny amounts of starch, and they blow it out of proportion. And in the process, they restrict the food that they eat. And I think a lot of health, in regards to like a placebo effect, is if you're constantly worried about the food that you're eating.
yeah, for sure.
I mean, you look at somebody like Mr. Trump, and he eats garbage from all the information we can get, and yet he still has the energy
Yeah,
to do
exactly.
what he's doing. So I think that you want to
Hell,
control.
yeah. I mean, who has more energy, the average Peter or 77-year-old Donald Trump filet o fish? Let's be honest about it. Let's be honest about it.
Yeah, and I think that's where the mindset.
But not just the Peter. I don't want to pick on them. The keto guys are probably not going to be able to keep up with them either.
Yeah, just even a lot of the quote optimized health people are gonna
Yeah.
pale in comparison to that. And I think that's the strength of your will, and your mindset of not obsessing, not worrying as much, and just kind
So
of
when your will is set, it's like your vibrational physics, the magnetic particles of all of the tissue in your body get set on a determined goal of victory or whatever it is that animates you. And if you keep focusing on that, it kind of vibrationally fixes your thyroid and your intestines and everything with that, while you throw in seed oil in it. Is that what's
I
going
think
on?
I think so. And even those,
That's amazing. That is amazing. That's the secret right there. Because I don't think we're going to get anybody to be eating
yeah,
gallons of orange juice and milk in America, bro. I mean, they might add it back in their diet, but I don't think you're going to have people avoiding. I mean, you know what I mean? It's kind of a the good thing about the keto thing that appeals to young men is that you can eat tons of meat and stuff. And then when, Ray Peat kind of reduces that fixation on that, I think, right? So you kind of reduce that kind of stuff. And it's like, in some ways, even though Ray Peat's approach feels on paper like, oh, wow, this is really nice. You get fruits and sugar and stuff. But then you kind of look at the details and you start seeing people saying, well, not too much starches or not too much that, not too much this, not too much that. It starts to become a really restrictive, oppressive diet, which is the opposite of what Ray Peat's philosophy is about. And then you get into the same conundrum, like you said, of stress, and then it's a feedback loop of hell, right? And you don't want
yeah.
to go there.
And if you were to ask somebody who, and we're just using the example of Mr. Trump because of his notoriety,
Yeah,
but I'm sure there's a lot of other people like him out there. And if you ask them, they probably just eat what they like. They eat what makes them feel good. And
yeah,
those are unique individuals where, like you're saying, their will is so strong that whatever electromagnetic, their electromagnetic field that they're generating is so strong that it's not necessarily phased by foods that might, in someone with a weaker field, a weaker
yeah,
will, would be affected by. And so when you do introduce that sort of worrying, if you think of a thought, it's
yeah,
you can track thoughts electromagnetically, and what that's doing to all your cells, all your
yeah.
body. Well, you worry about starch. Oh my God, I gotta go on a zero
Even seed
starch.
oils, I know that's scary. I mean, I don't, I meticulously avoid seed oils as much as I can, but like, um, I was talking to a person we talked about China, and this person I was talking to was from China, and I was saying, yeah, the key to good health, because she had a diagnosis that she overcame, and she was saying, other people, could have the same diagnosis happening. And I said, yeah, one of the key things is to make sure you avoid seed oils. And she said, that's the problem with you Americans. You think about these things and you worry about what to avoid. That doesn't have faith. She was a Christian. She's a Christian from China. And she said, we don't think like that in China. We don't fixate over like, oh, watch out for the vegetable oils or seed oils. And we don't have problems of obesity and stuff like you guys do, because you guys think about it. You obsess about it, and it becomes a part of you. So stop thinking about it and have faith, and just eat whatever the hell you want. And I was like, whoa, that's a different approach, right? So who knows what is the truth, right?
Yeah, and that's an amazing point because I think it goes back to your attention, your consciousness, and what you focus on is going to be magnified. I think there's
So
somebody.
have we screwed ourselves up because we magnetically, as a society, convinced ourselves for many years that seed oils were healthy for us? So we were like placebo. We were placebo affecting them into good health. And then when we realized that there was some chemical explanations that they were really bad for us, that as spreading that consciousness in our own hearts and then those around us and then society at large, it's going to accelerate the poor health of their effect now because, you know what I mean? Like whatever we believe in it, right? You know, I mean, that placebo effect is not a side issue. It's huge. You know, there's a great book on that called How to Heal or How Healing Works, and it's really good about like studying how like people's beliefs about what they're taking is critical for all of the healing that takes place, and you know that. But does that make you know? It's almost like a catch-22. If someone believes they're healthy and they think vegetable oils are healthy and they have a high vibrational energy and they're doing other things good, they might be just fine. Isn't that terrifying? It's terrifying and to think about. You know that by identifying these molecules as the bad pathways we see in them, are we not making them their effect worse? But at the same time, obviously, we can say, well, look, we can look at the decades that they were introduced and look at all the health effects that happened. So it's kind of an interesting thought, right?
That's sort of the forbidden fruit of knowledge in itself, is the idea of right and wrong, in
Right.
regards to something like that, in regards to health, as opposed to, again, just enjoying God's creation, enjoying life,
Yeah.
and doing things that you enjoy, eating food that you like. And I think when it comes down to that, you could test in the sense where, let's take something good like French fries. French fries cooked in tallow or coconut oil versus French fries cooked in soybean oil. Which one is better? You're probably going to choose the tallow and coconut oil, just
Right.
taste better, as opposed to looking at it like, oh my God, the fries with soybean oil are bad for you. I mean, it there definitely is an aspect of that. I think that's undeniable, but your
What's
consciousness and
healthier, having the mind of a Donald Trump who's jollily eating French fries right now cooked in seed oils, or driving 40 minutes across town to go to the one restaurant that cooks their fries in tallow, or taking the long time to set up your nasty beef tallow deep fryer with all, you know, pouring all the oil in and getting the temperature, cutting the potatoes. If you don't enjoy cooking, that may not be a pleasurable thing. And then you're doing it just to create a tallow fried chip that you could have got at McDonald's in a soybean oil. And if you were joyful eating that, you might have been healthier doing it. You see what I mean?
yeah, exactly.
Strange, strange, right? What a conundrum,
Jay, don't worry about it.
right? People, that's right. See, so why do we worry about this stuff?
I think we worry, because it's less about worrying, and like I was saying, more about doing something that's more enjoyable. So if you ate those, if you drove across town to get those expensive tallow fries and you really enjoyed it, and you enjoyed it more than you would the McDonald's French fries, which I think even a neutral party who doesn't necessarily know would be inclined, everything equal, would probably be inclined to think that the tallow or the coconut oil tastes better, because it ends up being better for us if we want to explore the why and how. Um,
Yeah,
but you're right. At the end of the day, I think it just comes down to you enjoying it, and you doing things in life that you like, and being happy because God wants you to be happy and you deserve it. And God's going to give you the kingdom. You kind of just got to accept it, as opposed to trying to come
yeah,
up with reasons why you can't have it.
yeah. It's interesting to think, like looking at those correlation maps. They say like the years that seed oils were introduced, progressively more and more, and how rates of obesity, heart disease, and cancer skyrocket. And I want to see how that maps out to like the years of people's belief in diet and the need to diet. Do those map out to their increases in all those diseases? You know, do they fit at a nice correlation too? Just as much as the introduction of those chemical foods. Does that make sense? What I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Just the idea of
Like rub
having
that tape back.
having the diet.
Yeah, just yeah, the cultural concept of pressuring people progressively more and more to fixate on diet does that correlate? I'd like to look at the data and see if that does. Does that correlate? I mean, it'd be kind of hard to measure, but like trying to find at what point in American society did they become fixated on uh, the need to diet all the time and fixate on their body size and stuff? And then does that map out with the rise of diseases progressively related to that? You know, it's interesting.
I think just based, on my memory, I think that one that started around, post World War II, which is when all these things started
Yeah.
being introduced. So,
So
you
which
know,
came first? The seed
chicken or the
oil
egg?
poison? Yeah, is the seed oil poison really the definitive driver, or is it our belief in diets in general and feeling like we're not good enough until we do some special diet to help us? It's just strange, right? So weird.
Yeah, it's strange, and I'm just going to be guided by my instincts and my intuition, and I'm gonna continue to eat foods that taste good to me. I'm gonna continue to do things that feel good to me, and not do things that don't. Obviously, there's the necessities that you got to do in life sometimes, but for the most part, I think if that's your how you approach life, however you want to do it, I think you're going to end up okay, as opposed to constantly fretting about how to optimize something. You know.
Yeah, it's insane. I mean, it really does predate, unfortunately, on kind of mentally ill fixations, you know?
Yeah, and that's when you're not well and you don't necessarily you're not living, you have these hyperfixations on things that don't necessarily matter, um, as much as maybe you think they do. So
So when you walk into a grocery store, do you stare at the blue light in fear? It's, ah, and
no,
run
I
quickly?
I don't sprint through. That would be a funny image, just going full speed through and just throwing things in your
Yeah, it's
cart.
just funny listening. It was like a good contrast from how nice that statement you said, and then just mentally picturing you later today going into a grocery store and staring at the blue light with
Go
that.
go go!
Yeah, go, come on, come on. And they're like, wait, I just heard you on the podcast. You were saying to chill out. I'm just, you
Yeah.
know.
No,
Well,
it's true.
hey,
I mean,
hey, let's go get a fillet of fish next time. I'm in California, or you're in. I'm just joking.
okay.
No, I'm just joking. No, I don't want that. But you know, the point is that it is a kind of strangeness. You know how they say, like, I'm sorry, I think you were saying something. I just remembered, but so they say it. But I was just going to say that, um, it's interesting where they say the curse of intelligence and knowledge. Like the more, like you said, like the kind of the knowledge thing, right? Like the more you know something, the more of a curse it becomes. You know?
Yeah, and that's the forbidden fruit of
Yeah,
designating something as right or wrong. I think it
yeah,
inevitably becomes true in some regard, which goes back to the power of your own attention and consciousness is something
yeah.
that is
That's
undeniable in health.
And it's so interesting too because vegetable oils are one of the. I mean, I know you could go back to earlier times, but vegetable oils really do kind of start at the beginning of the diet fixation of America. Really, you know.
And I think when you look at some of the advertisements, that's how, like, before. And I'm not saying I've studied advertisements from pre World War II or anything for foods,
Yeah,
but really when you get into that era is when you you start seeing some of those advertisements of them being good for your figure or good for your heart or good for
yeah,
this, for that. And there's probably, I mean, it's not that it started exclusively then, but that there was
yeah,
a suspicious campaign, and an uptick of those sort of instances.
yeah. It seems like a lot of diseases and ailment issues were related to malnutrition or whatever from previous centuries. But then when we got to more modern centuries, we solved some of that, and then we went nuts into all these health fixations, and that drove the the destruction and depletion of the soil and everything, and the destruction and depletion of our our positivity about food. Like people still to this day, when they say they're having a good time, they feel bad when they're eating a sugary drink or drinking a sugary drink or something. They feel like they're dirty or sinning, which can't be good for the thyroid. To feel like you're sinning when you're nourishing your body, right? I mean, that just can't be good.
Well, just if you want to get, you want to look at the anatomy, any sort of stress, you have the autonomic nervous systems for the fight or flight, rest and digest. That is what eventually controls, in large part, the thyroid. So even when you have a thought like that of, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm bad, I'm
Yeah,
you peak that sympathetic response, and as a result, there's nerves that go to your thyroid that shut it down, even if it's
yeah,
just temporarily, and close off the blood supply, so you stop
yeah.
secreting thyroid hormones. So that's absolutely correct.
Did you see that Dr. Meduna's studies he did with CO2? Did you
I
ever
don't
read
think
it?
so. No, no.
Is that the guy in the 50s that he was doing these like carbon dioxide therapy? It was called Meduna's mixture, and eventually it became known as that, where he would give people 30% CO2 inhalation, and like it would knock them out for a few minutes or something, and he'd bring them back, and they would get over like huge issues like mental retardation related issues like atheism or like phobias, like neurotic, mentally, emotionally retarded, stunted states that they were in, like stunted in a fixation or neurotic thing. A lot of them believed they like let go of their obsession with uh, adultery or carnality, and just that one session of 30% mixture in there. So I guess like a carbogen, but 30% CO2, so a super high amount. And it would like they were doing it in Savannah, Georgia, even, which is not far from Florida. Where it's like they were getting all kinds of great benefits from it.
I believe it. That's one thing is when I take a rip from my CO2 bong, it is a very clarifying experience. I again would not recommend it. Kids, don't try it at home, uh, because
That's
you
just
do have,
carbon dioxide. That's just pure carbon dioxide, right?
yeah, I have a tank, release the tank into a container, so it's not necessarily pure CO2, but
Uh,
I don't know the concentration, maybe 30, 50%. And you just take
yeah,
little sips through your nose, through your mouth. And I think these things, whether they be conditions or addictions, are all the reflection or the manifestation of not necessarily getting that energy. And in the case of somebody who's mentally disabled, they just don't have the energy in their brains um, to process
yeah,
and exist in a certain state that a quote normal person would be able to. And same with these phobias
yeah,
or addictions. Is something happened or there was some deficiency along the way, and they're lacking that energy. And when you're able to restore that, that sort of coping mechanism goes away.
yeah. So does the fascia light up all over the place when you start? Do you think that's what's going on in your body when you inhale that CO2, or what? You said it's like a Christmas tree inside your body, right? It's just
It's like a Christmas tree on the 4th of July inside of
when
my
you
body.
take one little sip of CO2, huh? Wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's probably about two or three because I try to get each nostril, and then I do the mouth too.
Why
Actually,
both? Why all three like that?
just I like your nose is your primary breathing apparatus, and so you do one nostril at a time to make sure you're kind of getting even. And then I do the mouth just because it's good for the gums, it's good for the teeth and the tongue, and you have a lot of nerves and blood vessels in the mouth. So just doing a little bit of CO2 will actually help absorb, and it's
Why?
it's it's
Yeah.
wet as well.
Why does your body want you to breathe primarily out of your nose holes when your mouth hole is bigger?
Well, your mouth hole is primarily for eating, and your nose and your sinuses, it's a built-in filter. And so going back to the sinus inflammation is usually it's inflamed when that filter is either clogged or not cleaned enough, and it's just kind of being bombarded with who knows what. So your nose heats up the air, it moistens the air a little bit through your sinuses and everything. It cleans the air. Um, and the tongue, when you breathe in through your nose, your tongue actually moves forward, and your pharyngeal muscles, your throat, contracts. And it doesn't contract as in it constricts, but it contracts because if it didn't contract, it would actually collapse on itself as the lungs are opening up. And so breathing through the nose allows for all that to happen. And when you breathe through the mouth, the tongue's got to do some weird things. The throat can't exactly contract as much as it should. You're not filtering the air. So the air itself is, when it enters the lungs, isn't quite as warm or moist as it would be if it went through the nose. So the nose is just, there's a lot of different things that allow it to better prepare the air for your lungs and keep your lungs clean. Because if that air is not getting filtered through your nose, anything that you're breathing in is going straight into your lungs, and that's not going to necessarily be easy to clean out. Like with your nose, you got snot, you got mucus to flush it out, and when you do, you either swallow it or you spit it out, as opposed to it being in the lungs and needing to be coughed out. As you can imagine, it's not easy or fun to deal with.
Yeah, that's fascinating stuff. Well, do you think that that is important that everybody breathe in their nose at all times?
Not necessarily at all times. If you're doing something really really exhausting, exercise, or you're running for your life, God forbid, you're going to end up breathing through your mouth, just to increase the sheer volume of air that you can get in. Because who cares at that point when you're just trying to survive and get as much oxygen as you can? Like it doesn't matter the if it's filtered or not or primed. You just got to get it in. Um, Otherwise, if you're not doing those things, if you're not exercising to the point of exhaustion, if you're not fighting for your life, yeah, I think breathing through your nose as often as you can is a good thing to practice.
Yeah, but again, don't get neurotic about it, right?
Yeah, yeah. Don't.
And don't beat yourself up over it and make yourself feel like you're a sick person if you have to breathe through your mouth sometimes,
That's
right?
that's the key right there is forgiveness of yourself. That's I think
Mm-hmm.
why Christianity goes with the metaphor of Jesus dying for your sins, because we're always are going to be our worst critic. And then since we're always observing what we do and the whole right and wrong thing, and if we uh, chastise ourselves and berate ourselves and tell ourselves we're not worthy, it doesn't do us any good and actually harms us. Versus when we
Right.
mess up, understanding, hey, you're forgiven always, and you
Yeah.
can go on and just press on. I think the
Yeah.
quote from scripture is pressing on towards the mark of Jesus Christ. So just continuing to aspire to that state of consciousness.
Yeah. So true. And it ties in so well with the dieting thing about calories in and calories out. Because it's like, even with the Ray Peat approach, which I'm not saying it's not like he did this, but what it becomes, right? Culturally and socially, it's like, um, you think, oh, well, if you're gonna lose a lot of weight or something, you think, okay, well, then you're in a punishment stage. You know what I mean? Because even though, like, let's say the ketogenic approach, you have to be punished, no more carbs for you. You've sinned too much, or you didn't choose the right profession to, throw bricks around or something, so therefore you're a sinner, you're a sloth, because or whatever. Or if you go to the like a bioenergetic approach, there's even with there's still the kind of restriction feeling that comes onto you, and then it becomes kind of this cognitive dissonance where even though Ray Peat's whole approach was to get rid of that mindset, to get rid of the authoritarianism and the self hatred of this philosophy that runs so much of our culture. and to embrace the joy and the spontaneity and the joy, it becomes a slog when you're told, oh, well, if you're going to do the bioenergetic way for weight loss, you must severely restrict fat. Well, fat's very pleasurable. Your body wants it. And you have to tell yourself, well, your body can't have it because it doesn't know what it wants. So don't you dare eat that, or else you're not, you're not doing it right, or whatever. Same thing for, oh, we have to restrict protein. It's like always something has to be sacrificed from you as some kind of atonement. And I think that whole thing is toxic. And I think the whole diet thing, even the bioenergetic dieting, becomes a toxic antichrist gesture, really, in terms of the way it's socially constructed most of the time.
I think it comes down to your end goal when you're doing these things, and a lot of people they sort of they miss the mark in the sense that they're striving for something instead of just saying, hey, look, I want to enjoy my life. I want to spend my time here doing things that I love doing and helping people that I also love, and not necessarily making my existence suffering. They, as you said, they have to make a sacrifice in order for that to happen. It's like a magic ritual or a human, like a human sacrifice in that
Yeah,
sense, where in order to achieve this, you need to first do that.
yeah,
And I just don't think that at the end of the day, that's necessarily going to make you happier or healthier if that's your goal. Again, if your goal is to be as lean as possible, if your goal is like I said, to impress mentally ill people on the internet, then maybe that is what you need, and by all means. But for everyone else, I think that does have to be kept in mind that you shouldn't, you don't necessarily need an insanely restrictive diet to get what you want out of life.
yeah. I think that's where hypnosis can be helpful too, as an example, because if you look at hypnosis, a lot of times the hypnotic practitioner will say, in an ethical sense, he'll he or she will tell the person who's being hypnotized, shoulders are relaxing, the eyelids are taking a break. And it's like you're talking to all the magnetic field particles of each tissue, and you're sending a vibrational frequency of intent, which is relax, you know? And instead of it being this woo woo scary thing that becomes stupid, no, it's actually just a, magnetic interaction between the person who's the practitioner sending a good intention, which has, like, as we said, thought and word and all that has its own resonance. And so when you're sending an intent of eyeballs relaxing, shoulders just falling apart like they do, just going at ease, you're actually talking to tissues saying, hey, it's okay. Just chill out. You don't have to be fight or flight. And that gives a window into where we need to get all the time. And that's why I think children, they say they're in that hypnotic like state all the time, right? I don't know what the word is right off my head right now. Was it sympathetic or what is it? It's like they're in a state of like a hypnosis,
Yeah,
suggestive, right? Yeah.
mhm.
And
It's
that's what Jesus Christ said is the kingdom of heaven looks like that. That's kind of interesting, right? This total relaxed state. I mean, obviously not always. They have their meltdowns because their brain's developing and stuff. But
I'm speaking on that. I'm an enjoyer of brainwave entrainment and getting into that state of mind. I mean, there's many ways you can do it. You can just practice. You can eat food. You can set the environment. I mean, that's naturally what's going to happen right before you fall asleep.
yeah,
Uh, but you're right. Kids are going to be in that state where it's that sort of thinking, over analytical thinking mind has gone to bed, and it's just you're
it's the right hemisphere brain is more active, right? Yeah,
yeah, I don't know exactly which hemisphere it is. I think there's some people who say one thing or another around that, but it's definitely has to do with which side of the brain, how your brain is, at what sort of frequency, literally uh, brainwave frequency you're operating at. And when you're in that hypnotic state, it's a sort of low frequency where you're conscious, kind of conscious, but you're very suggestible. You're open and impressionable. Your guard is sort of let down. That survival state is turned off. And I'm also big on subliminals for people. I think people should make their own subliminals. I actually help people make their own subliminals of where you
What do you
record.
mean by that? How does that work?
So you end up recording yourself saying various things, affirmations, sort of questions phrased as affirmations, or affirmations phrased as questions, um, that maybe suggest a certain state that you want to achieve, that maybe suggests a certain change in your life, a change in your mindset. Um, and so you record yourself saying that, and then I put it through like an audio editing software. And if you take those recordings, lower the volume, speed them up to the point where you can't consciously process it. The idea is that you can't consciously hear it and understand it, but you subconsciously can. So it kind of bypasses that filter. And then you play this audio. Normally, there's some sort of noise layered over top of it, so you can't hear it, and it's not kind of like obnoxious. And you can sort of change your thoughts. And it's worked on me. That's why I do it, is because I did it for myself, and it worked for me. Just sort of changing, having a more positive outlook. Not like a
Are you positive? You're a
I'm a I'm a
positive. Yeah.
I'm a very positive person. I'm
Wow. So
not
you've
not to the
noticed. So you've noticed that it's improved your like moods and your regulation of attitude and so forth and disposition towards life.
yeah. And
Uh,
by no means is it alone. It's something that you definitely want to combine with other changes in your life.
yeah.
But I think it's powerful because if you don't really realize it, but you're always subliminally saying affirmations to yourself based on what you assume about yourself and your condition. And I think for people that are ill, that's huge because they keep telling themselves that they're ill. They keep telling themselves that they have some issue, and they end up just keep feeding. They're feeding that issue further by assuming that and telling themselves that constantly. So if you're able to sort of inject new thought processes in there, to potentially override that software, because the mind software is is malleable and it's meant to change based on your experiences. And I think people that have those negative uh, thought patterns, they are either dealing with something currently, or maybe they dealt with something in the past that caused those to change in order to preserve their life,
Yeah.
preserve their survival. And so something like this can just be a little extra boost to get
Yeah.
you over.
And you like the red light therapy too? You do that?
Oh, dude, I'm a huge fan. I got a chicken lamp over my head, so when I'm working in the morning, I turn that on. My head.
That's the one that emits heat, not just light, right?
Yeah, you do
Yeah.
get some heat there. I'm also a fan of the LEDs for topical use. Um, there's a brand that I really like. I'm just for disclosure, I'm affiliated with them, so I do get some kickback for advertising them, but I do have two of them, so I love them. They're the Flex Beam, which I'll go pick one up right now. It's an LED device, the strongest one you could buy. I mean, you can buy some on Amazon, but pretty sure those all come from the same factory in Shenzhen or something. So, and those are sort of questionable quality. They're sort of hit or miss. But I have a with the Flex Beam, I do it every day on my stomach. You can do it on, let's see, you got any sort of physical pain, like a knee pain, a shoulder pain. It's great for that.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm a big red
What
light
about
fan.
what about old school chromotherapy where they would use different colors? Like clinicians would use like purple, and they would do something specifically about purple would help with some type of effect on the body, and then they would do different lights. Have you heard of that? It's
Yeah,
called
yeah.
chromotherapy. How's that different from what red light therapy is doing?
I think red light is more about getting it. It's not necessarily about getting it in the eyes and in the brain, as opposed to getting it in the whatever area you're trying to target. So again, if it's something that's bothering you, a knee pain sort of thing, or a gut pain thing, as opposed to the chromotherapy being more of a systemic thing where you use the light, it goes through your eyes and it tells your brain behaves in a certain way based on the color that's being presented, as opposed to a more local thing with the red light. Not saying the red light doesn't have a similar sort of systemic effect, but I think that's the difference there.
So, is there any medicinal benefit to blue light? And is there some kind of benefit that's happening when we get all this blue light, even though there's also negatives?
Yeah. There's blue light. The problem with
Look at me trying to redeem all the scapegoats of our culture, the seed oils, the blue lights. I'm trying to redeem them. That's the nature of this program. We try to look for what the other side of it is too, right?
yeah, you have to. I think with blue light, it's the problem is that anytime you get blue light naturally, so from the sun, it's always going to be paired with infrared and red and green, and so the synergy of all of them mitigates the effects of blue light. Blue light is actually, because it's sort of a higher frequency light, it has more of a stimulating effect, which is why it's used a lot, because when you get that bright light, you're kind of like, okay, ready to go, because it's sort of simulating that midday sun, which is usually when you're most active. But the blue light by itself is toxic, and in small amounts, you can use it. People use it for like acne or infections because it kills bacteria and some other organisms. It's just when you get it for 8 hours a day and you don't get the infrared and red and green with it, and it's
Yeah,
not cyclical, so it's all day as opposed to just being for a few hours in
yeah,
the late morning to late afternoon. That's kind of messes up your internal clock. So it's not necessarily that the blue light is bad, but that its present application or its widespread application today without being balanced sort of magnifies what it does.
yeah. Well, that's really interesting. It's a lot of factors to look into without trying to get again neurotic or scared about this stuff. When you talk about the Wi-Fi and the EMF, the cell phone towers, the Wi-Fi box in your house, the cell phone in your pocket or on your head or by your face, on a scale of 1 to 10, how dangerous is that? Versus on a scale of 1 to 10, how dangerous is this over blue light exposure?
I think with those, it's how close you are to the source. If you have a tower in your backyard, it's
Right,
not looking good for you.
right.
If you sleep next to a Wi-Fi router, yeah, you should probably change that. So for EMFs, it's very
What
much
if what if you just happen to have your bed set up and there's like electrical wiring by that part of the where your head is and you don't know it because like you're not an electrician.
yeah. I don't know the exact details,
Yeah,
but from what I understand, that's similar. You do get some. I mean,
yeah.
there's electricity going through wires, so there's going to be some sort of electromagnetic field there. And if it's right next to your head, again, the proximity is the most important thing. I guess what you could do is some people, it requires a lot of work, but you can have the quote clean outlets. There's something that people do. I don't know, but or you can just sort of put some tinfoil around it. So instead of having a tinfoil hat, you have tinfoil. Um, but in comparison to the light, I think the light is probably more of an issue because it's more prevalent and it's not
Like
as
the
much.
cell because of the cell phone and the computers and the in the rooms. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because you also get. I mean, it's hard to say because when you're also using your phone at night, if you don't have a
yeah.
filter, or your computer, your TV, you're also getting the blue light um, as
And,
well. So
and the
so I
EMF. Yeah,
so I don't know. Out of 10, they're pretty close. I'd say the light is probably going to edge it out a little bit, but not much. I mean,
Yeah,
there's still two things to be conscious of, but not neurotic about.
yeah. So before you get to the dietary issue, which is what people focus on a lot, rank the priority of villains of things you need to challenge yourself to overcome. Lack of sunlight exposure every day, lack of proper sleep, and I think sleep is more about sleeping at the same time and waking up at the same time as opposed to the actual duration of the time. Am I correct on that? Yeah,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that what you'll find is when you get the people who are maybe they have to wake up early for work and they get into that rhythm, the rhythm itself is where you get most of the good, and the disruptions to that rhythm are where you kind of get chaotic and out of sync.
so let's rank the challenges besides the food. You got the lack of sunlight people have, the lack of circadian rhythm, sleep quality, and consistency. You've got the blue light stuff. You've got the EMF and radiation stuff. And am I forgetting anyone? I guess you got the toxic chemicals and you got the mold and all that other stuff. Where do you kind of rank those villains to like a priority to to battle against?
Keeping in mind what would be easiest for the average person, I think the sunlight, getting more natural sunlight would probably be at the top, meaning that a lack of sunlight
What? Yeah.
is going to be the most dangerous.
What's an excellent amount of sunlight for the if it's all things being equal, you're not in the tundra or something like 2 hours a day or like all body exposure or like I know you can't start off that way for a lot of people, but what would it ideally be? Just like
I think it would look like short bouts of direct exposure. You don't have to be nude, although nude sunbathing is, if you have the opportunity, I would
yeah,
recommend it. I'll just say that. Um, but I think it's more about the frequency as opposed to the duration. So if you're able to get outside, get direct sun 3, 4, 5 times a day, and
yeah,
then be in indirect sun. So if you're inside, you're close to a window.
yeah,
Those windows are ideally open if they can be. You can
yeah,
be in the shade underneath a tree. Um, but for a given recommendation, again, it's going to depend on where you live. If I say tell someone in Sweden
yeah,
in a couple months, hey, spend 6 hours, spend 3 hours outside. They're like, okay, yeah, good luck with that, because it's 0 degrees and and just
yeah,
miserable to be outside. I think as much as you can and as much as your life allows you to, take that opportunity and molding your life. So if you're at work, taking little breaks to go outside, taking a
yeah,
phone call outside, eating your lunch outside, as opposed to doing something like, oh, I have to set aside 30 minutes a day just to be in the sun and do nothing.
yeah,
That,
yeah,
that sort of almost defeats the purpose, where you're being outside because it's supposed to be good for you, as opposed to being outside because, it's just you can, and it kind of feels good, when you're
right,
able to talk outside, sort of thing. So unfortunately, I can't give you a number, but
yeah, yeah,
other than as much as you can.
yeah. I
And
just
as
want people to. I don't want people to feel a false sense of defeatism if they're only getting 30 minutes of sunlight a day or something like that in terms of direct sun exposure. Oh, I'm not even close to where I need to be. I'll never get enough vitamin D or something. So
Yeah, the direct exposure is difficult because you do have to get some
yeah,
skin.
yeah,
Yeah, no, but not a lot of people have 30 minutes of their day just to
yeah,
sunbathe. So I'd say
yeah,
indirect sunlight is almost as good, as long as it's getting in your eyes
yeah,
indirectly.
yeah,
That's going to be a lot of the benefit there, as opposed to getting direct sun on as much of your skin as possible.
yeah. So
And
you
so
would
I,
do sunlight first as the first enemy to tackle, aside from diet stuff.
and then I'd probably, the second, in addition to the sunlight, would be the blue light. So eliminating those, um, extraneous sources of blue where you can. I've done something recently where in my house I even had incandescent bulbs, but I replaced them with special amber ones, which are a little more red and yellow. So they
Send,
very much.
send us a link. We'll put that in the show description.
Okay, I literally just picked one from Amazon,
Okay. Okay.
but it'll give people an idea of what to look for. I'm sure there's better ones out there,
Yeah.
but doing that has made a big difference. And not that I've necessarily had sleep problems, but I've noticed that I feel better, and you notice when you're exposed, when you're in that environment of having no blue light or very little, and then you get some sort of burst of blue light. Like I open my fridge and it's like, oh wow, that's oppressive. Um, so I'd probably put that at number two.
Do you wear those blue light blockers glasses or whatever?
I mean, if you have to, I think the best time to use those would be when driving. If you're driving at night and you have to drive at night for work, and then you're getting blinded by people with the stupid LED lights. I'd
Oh
say
yeah.
that's probably the best time because that's a situation where you're getting focused,
Yeah.
concentrated blue light right in your eyes,
Yeah.
right where they don't need to be. Um, Otherwise, I would suggest once you're home, just eliminating as much in your environment. The
Yeah.
glasses aren't perfect for a home scenario. Number three, so if we're thinking the sunlight one,
Oh, what's more? Wait, sorry. What's more important, getting red light exposure therapy or removing blue light, excess blue light?
mm, that's a good one. I don't really know. I think probably if I had to pick, I'd probably pick removing the blue light, just for the circadian benefits.
Can we
But
just split the difference and just put purple light all the time on, and now just get it all done? Does
I
that just
wish,
get the job done?
I wish it
The
was
light,
that easy.
the light
I
of
mean,
royalty.
the purple is going to be better than just the straight blue, but you
Yeah.
just the presence of the blue alone at night is
Yeah.
gonna make some things more difficult. But I would say that the light things are probably the two biggest. Next, it's kind of a toss up between EMF and toxins, whether they be like mold or dust or heavy metals. I think they're very close, and it would depend on the person.
You don't need tests or things people could do to find out if they have mold, in their system or whatever.
I think there's a lot of I honestly don't know the specifics on the effectiveness of those tests because what I've seen from a lot of those, whether they be mold or heavy metals, um, and the lot, those sort of tests is they're the ones they're the ones doing the test or sort of grading the test. They're the ones interpreting the test, and then conveniently they also usually have a bunch of supplements and other things that you're supposed to take uh, in addition to that. So I think you have to be wary of companies that try to do that. But there are tests that you can use to see if you've been exposed to mold. If you're living with mold, I think not that it's necessarily an obvious thing all the time because, like you said, it could be in the walls and hard to detect. But I think if you're living in a moist environment, just like Florida, um, there could be some problems. So probably a test if you're suspicious of it, it wouldn't hurt. But I do think you should take the results with a grain of salt and be cautious of what they try to tell you. If they try to tell you to spend $300 on
Yeah.
their supplement protocol, then you should start to question things. Was that it? Was that
I think so. Yeah. I really appreciate you coming on, and I know everybody's going to want to follow you on your Twitter. What is your at handle again?
my at is probably the worst thing to say
Well, just
in regards to when I say it, it's at spheno underscore xiphoid. So you're unless
yeah.
you're
Oh my
familiar with
goodness.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
just
So I'm
you
not.
just undermined all your normie cred right there, buddy.
I
You had all
torpedoed my.
you had an army of Walmart shoppers ready to repent, turn to Christ, and then you did that when they said,
They're
"Okay,
done.
this guy's weird. This guy's weird, man. Can't take it."
Basically, that's why it's better to just put it underneath or whatever, wherever this is going. The ad Xyphoid. And I'm in the process of rebranding to a more acceptable or easy to spell sort of identity. So in the future, I'll let people know.
You're gonna be the light of love at light of love 1114.
Just that actually, just saying that makes me change my mind. I might have to change it to light and love.
I
Just
appreciate you coming on, and you did a really good overview of a lot of different topics: calories in, calories out, fascia, and why we can't get rid of fascia because they're essential. Uh, and we don't know what you said they kind of look like putty a little bit. You said, or not like jelly, like a mess.
yeah, it's probably going to look like a jelly with some like a fibrous jelly sort of
That's
thing.
like that stuff that if you ever go to those, I think it's like those Korean tea shops where they have all that stuff they put in the tea. Like different jellies and custards. It's probably like
Oh,
that.
boba.
Yeah. So you could do that. We talked about a lot about calories in, calories out. One thing you said in your thread, and I know there's probably a bunch on that thread that we didn't get to. I don't have it pulled up, so I'm just kind of referencing the general remembrances. You said that like fat is not very your body. The reason why it hangs on to it is it's not very costly to keep it. So it's like I don't need to deal with you. I can, right. So I thought that was interesting that it'll eat its muscle sometimes more before it eats fat. That's kind of weird, right? The way you said that. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, because when you get into that process of that auditing process where you go, okay, what can we cut?
Yeah.
What is costing us
Yeah.
energy? The fat, because it's inert, it's not really doing anything, and again, it has those protective
So
effects.
it's so interesting. Like the body really doesn't care about fat like our culture does. Our culture doesn't align with our bodies.
Yeah,
Like our
in
body cares
many
about
ways.
it and it'll get rid of it, but it's not super freaked out about it, obviously, apparently, right?
Yeah,
So
and
I don't know.
I think that's when you have to question the people who are just about trying to be as lean as
Yeah.
you can be, no matter the cost. That's when you need to go. Okay, probably don't listen to those people, or don't blindly listen to those people. Maybe they
Well, what
have some.
about people even in the bioenergetic sphere that would say, well, if you're overweight, that's the first priority I would tackle is get that saw before all the other things. Do you agree with that?
I think as long as your movement isn't terribly restricted, I don't think it's as much of a big deal as people make it out to be. And again, just the idea of telling somebody that and the
That's
getting
you're committing one of the greatest blasphemies in all of unified. Besides, it's one of the great blasphemies of all of their, of medical thought, including the dissident alternative health world. It's
yeah,
like,
it really is.
yeah.
And I'd
They'll
say as
say,
long as it,
"Are you kidding me? It's associated with excess mortality, heart disease." They'll just start spitting it all out at you, huh? So
well
it's because of what
the
they're eating and stressing out about while they're overweight, not the fat itself, right?
the key word there is associated and not causative
Right. But
necessarily.
what about the classic mechanical argument of it's restrictive for it's like it's stressful to have to pump all that extra tissue and keep it all oxygenated and blah blah blah.
Well, again, the fat isn't very metabolically active as opposed to
Yeah.
something like muscle, um, or your brain tissue or your vital organs,
So
which
fat as an organ is not a very costly house guest, you're saying, in and of itself.
it doesn't cost a lot, um, perhaps when it gets to the amount to where it physically impairs your ability to move, or is maybe a physical burden, that's when you can get more into that argument.
But
But just
does it tax your, like people say it taxes your heart to run? Is that true or overblown or?
I think that's a little overblown.
Yeah.
And again, there's going to be extremes that you
Yeah.
can. But I think that when they say associated with, they're looking at the fat as a
Yeah.
causative factor as opposed to an adaptive response to a
Yeah.
number of different things happening in the
So your
person.
body, yeah. So your body puts that on for a reason. It's not stupid. It is doing that for an intentional reason, as a response to the stress, whether it was stress through eating the wrong food, sleeping the wrong way, getting the wrong mold, getting the wrong pesticides, getting the wrong light, eating too little, eating too much. All of that all ends up oftentimes expressing itself as extra fat has moved into the apartment. But the
Yeah,
fact that it's there doesn't mean that in and of itself you must shoot that house guest at all costs before you get healthy. It's kind of not as important. It's there because the body wants it there intelligently until it's ready to be not stressed. Is that right?
yeah. And when you end up forcibly removing that fat through stress without taking into account why it's there in the first place, I think that's when you get a lot of issues. And then you see the people who go through the extraordinary weight loss, which they look worse.
Yeah.
They look sick, and even if you don't want to compare the two, if you took just the after picture, you'd say, "Man, that guy looks sick."
Yeah.
Um, and that's almost all the time when you see those
Yeah.
drastic cases. And then what ends up happening is once they inevitably stop because you just can't starve yourself and beat yourself up for that long,
Yeah.
they end up right back where they were unless they're extremely disciplined or they do actually end up addressing sort of the stressors that ended up contributing to that being in that
Yeah.
position in the first place.
Yeah. Well, very interesting. I really appreciate your time. It's been great talking to you, Matthew Spearman. Check him out on X, and we'll leave links in the description. But it's always great talking to you.
Yeah, David, it was a pleasure being on, and I hope to be on again, actually.
All right. Sounds good. Take care.
Okay, you too, man.